This is the brand new 2026 Dell XPS 14. For years now, the XPS has basically been the closest thing we've ever gotten to a Windows MacBook. And having had an XPS 13 back in 2020, that thing felt very premium. But this year's version got some very interesting upgrades, so let's see how good it really is. And please like and subscribe if you like these type of videos. From the outside, the XPS 14 can only be described in a single word: premium. It is very low-key, having only this sleek XPS branding and a professional, or dare I say boring, color. It's got a fully aluminum body from top to bottom, and boy is this thing dense. Many laptops have metal bodies, but there lies a real art in having a finish that lines all of those parts up perfectly. Just like a MacBook Air, it feels like it could stop a bullet. I mean, it's on a whole nother level of build quality. But despite those materials, it's still really lightweight. So you can easily pick it up and use it with one hand. And it is really, really thin. Its bottom has no vents, and overall, you can clearly see they took the MacBook as inspiration. I know I sound like a glazer right now, but trust me, I know how to criticize Dell when they deserve it. The most important change about this new XPS though is on the inside. It now has a new Intel 300 chip, but more importantly, a very fast iGPU. Most previous XPS laptops had dedicated NVIDIA GPUs, but they were so massively cucked by their wattage limits that they kinda sucked. But this new Ultra X7 is quite impressive, both CPU and GPU wise. So we're gonna have to see how fast it really is. There are also lower spec versions of this guy without that fast iGPU though, if you just want a laptop for basic stuff. But when we get to its port selection, this is where Dell starts copying Apple in the wrong areas. The XPS 14 only has USB-C ports and nothing else. And I know you can get a lot of functionality out of those if you just have a couple of dongles with you, but people underestimate how handy it is to just be able to plug in anything, new or old, without having to bring a bunch of extras with you. I mean, most regular wireless mice don't work here, simply because you can't stick in any USB-A dongles. It does charge exclusively through USB-C, so of course it comes with a 100-watt USB-C charger naturally, at least in most countries. If you're from the EU, you might be out of luck. But this means you could use any USB-C charger, so it's quite versatile. But then again, if you need to charge this laptop, you only have space for 2 more peripherals without dongles, which is not that much. Now let's look at its keyboard. It looks very sleek. The XPS 14 line has this really low profile key layout, where it almost looks like the keys are floating next to each other. But as to how it feels to type on, it's alright. The keys don't have a lot of travel, but it does feel better than a MacBook. They're pretty clicky. But not having any space between the keys makes it pretty hard to type blindly. You can't really feel when you're moving over to another key. It's not bad, but you'll definitely have to get used to it. This keyboard does have a backlight luckily, which looks very sleek in the dark, and its power button requires a lot more force to press down than the other keys, so you won't accidentally press on it, hopefully. But moving down, we have nothing. Well, this is actually a singular slab of glass. And between these two slight lines with texture are a bunch of capacitive sensors that simulate a click. And this feels awesome to use. We've already seen Force Touch trackpads on other laptops, and it feels so much more premium than a diving board one. You can click down anywhere just as easily, and you can actually customize how easy it is to press down and how strong the vibration is. And since it's just a glass slab, it doesn't rattle. So you've just got this single beautiful keyboard deck. But it is still glass, and glass... Moving up, we have its display. And with a 3K 120Hz OLED panel, this is about as good as it gets at 14 inches. If you're a frequent viewer, you might recognize these specs, because this is the exact same display unit used in the Zephyrus G14, the Omen 14 and a bunch of other laptops. It is, of course, an OLED, so you've got beautiful, vibrant colors, which are color accurate, infinite contrast, and those blacks just look stunning, especially in the dark. 120 Hz means games or applications look nice and smooth on it, and combined with the super low pixel response times of OLED, it's even better. It's got a way too high resolution of 3K, so even if you like to make out with your screen, you're never gonna see any pixels. And it uses one of the best anti-reflective coatings on the market, also found on the Zephyrus G14. So even though it's a glossy display, reflections are handled very well. Combine that with a nice high brightness of 500 nits, and you can even use this thing outside with no issues. And to top it all off, it also has a touchscreen, which many people want and many people just don't care about. The hinge on the XPS 14 is very high quality. It feels sturdy and tight, but you can still open it up with one hand quite easily. But the rubber feet on the bottom aren't super rubbery. So the laptop can slide around quite easily on some tables, which is a little annoying. And while it doesn't open up to a full 180 degrees, it is just built very well. So it doesn't wobble at all, even if you directly tap it. Now when it comes to speaker quality, historically the XPS line has done very nicely. So how does the XPS 14 sound? It sounds amazing. It has a quad speaker setup with 2 speakers firing up from behind the keyboard and 2 firing down via these intake vents. It does sound a little muffled at times, since it doesn't have any direct speaker grills at the top, and sound can get a little distorted at the highest volume setting. But it gets very, very loud, has amazing sounding bass, and overall it's just well tuned. And it sounds awesome for both music and games. The XPS 14 has a very high quality webcam. A 1440p sensor is pretty rare in laptops these days. And while the microphone sounds a little muffled, it sounds very nice. It's clear that this thing is marketed towards professionals. But what makes or breaks this thing is its performance. That new Ultra X7 is supposed to have a pretty powerful iGPU. So how fast is it? Well, in Cinebench R23, we see that its CPU is actually a little lacking. It does okay in single-core performance, but despite being a 2026 chip, it lags behind a bit in multi-core. Well, as it turns out, this laptop does not automatically install the newest drivers for that Intel chip. You have to manually install the Intel driver tool and download all the newest stuff. Now, after installing the newest drivers, that's more like it. The multi-core score is still a little behind those newest Ultra 9 scores, but its single-core performance is great. But in 3D Mark TimeSpy, we see that iGPU is not exactly the fastest. Don't get me wrong, this is an impressive result, but it lags behind the fastest AMD iGPU by quite a lot. Now, I also ran the Blender Classroom benchmark to show how it performs in 3D modeling loads on both its CPU and GPU. I don't really know anything about 3D modeling software myself, but I thought some people might like those numbers. I myself am first and foremost a gamer. And while this little guy is definitely not a gaming laptop, a lot of people want to play games on the side. So let's run them anyways and see how it performs. Okay, so the XPS 14 can run most games, but not perfectly. First of all, you need to run games at a lower resolution on this guy. At 1800p, you're just not getting playable frame rates even at the lowest settings. And the difference between 1200p and 1800p is so small at 14 inches, you basically don't notice it. In older games, or games that support XeSS upscaling, you can pump quite some frames out of the XPS 14. Counter-Strike did stutter a bit at times, so playing competitively might not be the best idea here. And heavier games like Oblivion or Rust didn't have the greatest FPS. But it's not like these are the most optimized games or whatever. Now, what I thought was especially interesting about this laptop is its performance on battery. Both its CPU and GPU performance are identical when you plug it in or have it running off of battery. In all benchmarks, it scored the exact same. So if you want to do some work on the go or just play some games on battery, you can just do that. It won't lose any performance, which is pretty rare for a Windows laptop. Now, Intel has been marketing frame generation as a solution for the lower frame rates on these chips. Well, Cyberpunk does support this feature, and you get quite a nice FPS boost out of it. But if you're already getting low frame rates at, say, 1800p, you also get a lot of delay between your input and the game. This becomes a lot better if you were already getting above 60 or 70 FPS, so I would only use it in those scenarios. First-person games with noticeable input delay don't feel that great, so I wouldn't recommend using FrameGen here. But in conclusion, the XPS 14 can run most games. Intel drivers don't always play nicely with every game, but if you want to play games on the side, you can definitely do that. Just make sure to lower those graphical settings a little bit. Now, the XPS 14 is very thin and doesn't exactly have the cooling of a gaming laptop. So how hot does it run, and do the fans make a lot of noise? Well, while playing a very heavy game, so basically the worst case scenario for a laptop, the hottest its CPU ever got was 68 degrees Celsius. You know how low that is for a laptop? This chip barely uses 30 watts at its peak, so it is very easy to cool and doesn't really get hot. It's clear that Dell is prioritizing comfort and temperatures over performance, and they're doing a pretty damn good job at it. But what does that mean for fan noise? Yeah, it barely makes any noise at all. And that is during a heavy gaming load. During normal use, it is completely silent. So it doesn't use much power. That sounds like good news for battery life, right? Well, I tested its battery in two different scenarios, under light use and during gaming. In the light use test, I played a YouTube video until its battery died, with its display at 80% brightness, at 60 Hz, and with the keyboard backlight turned off. And this thing lasts really, really long. We already knew from other chips from this Intel generation that they are very efficient, but it's still really impressive. The Ultra X7 358H is built on the new Intel 18A process, which is very efficient. Pair that with plenty of efficiency and low power efficiency cores, and it barely uses 5 watts on battery. Now, in the gaming test, I played Minecraft until its battery died, with the same settings as before. And obviously this uses a lot more power, and it still lasted over 3 hours, which, believe it or not, is really long for a game. In actual real-world use, your battery life is going to be somewhere between these two numbers, but 7 to 8 hours of actual use is still really good. But it can't all be sunshine and rainbows, unfortunately. Making a device thin and light has its sacrifices. And those sacrifices are almost always upgradeability. The XPS 14 has no upgradable memory, so you're stuck with however much you bought it with. It only has one M.2 SSD slot, so you'll have to reinstall Windows if you ever want more storage. and it has no replaceable Wi-Fi card, although Wi-Fi 7 should be enough for a while. And the other downside for such a premium device is obviously its price. This model, with the Ultra X7 and that fast iGPU, starts at 2,400 euros in Europe, and in the USA it's around 2,300 bucks, excluding taxes. There are cheaper models with a slower processor and a way slower iGPU, which are a lot more affordable, but also not as fast. But for a laptop with no dedicated graphics, 2.5K is quite a lot. Which brings us to our conclusion. Is the 2026 XPS 14 worth it? Well, I do think so, but only for certain people. This thing is incredibly premium. It is one of the few Windows laptops with actual MacBook levels of build quality. It's very sturdy, it doesn't creak or rattle, and it's impressively thin and lightweight. That new Ultra X7 chip is a beast. It may not be a gaming chip, but it'll handle basically everything you throw at it, from video editing to 3D modeling or even just most games. And it'll do all of that just as well on battery, which is quite rare for Windows laptops. It has ridiculously long battery life and one of the best displays at its size. Overall, for most people, this is a dream machine. If you need a small, thin and light device for normal or creative work, this might be one of the best options you have. But there is a premium attached to that, so if you can afford it, I'd say go for it. Is what I would say if there were no other laptops in this price bracket that are competing with it. And that is not the case. The Zephyrus G14 is also 14 inches, but it has way more power shoved into that little body. And with dedicated graphics, it offers a lot more performance than this guy. So which one of these should you get? Well, let's find out in the next video, where I'll be comparing them head to head in full detail. So see you all in the next video. Bye bye.